Welcome everybody to the Buck Custom Shop Seminar.
Oh no! You didn't charge it or something?
We were all prepared to have a great seminar for you, and then Wild Bill showed the camera to Leroy. So all bets are off now. I hope he doesn't choke up.
You're all in trouble.
This is a very low-tech seminar. We don't have PowerPoint.
Yeah.
We don't have the designated lasers. There's nothing to point at. It's just no free knife giveaways. Just an old-fashioned hillbilly get-together, right? Everybody knows Leroy Remer, first custom shop knife maker. And the last one. I'm John Foresman. I just collect Buck Custom knives. Love them. I like the fact that these guys held them in their hands and made them, put all these great different handle materials on it. I just started specializing in them a long time ago. It's neat to be able to talk to these fellas and know who made the knives. The custom shop first opened in 1980. It started out life as a repair shop. Mac McKinney was the head of the repairs. Leroy worked for him in the repair shop, and they made all kinds of repairs, all the knives that came in. And why don't you tell us how the custom shop came to be?
Well, we were getting ready to move into the new plant over off of Wells, and we're getting all the machinery out, and Mac and Capiello come up. And we're out painting the machines. I won't say what was said, but they were brown. You remember them. And they
Hold
were...
on one second. Frank Capiello was the production manager.
Yeah, production manager. Pat Capiello.
Pat Capiello, that's right.
And I'm out painting the machines, and Pat come up to me with Mac, and they said, "You want to be a custom knife maker?" And I said, "Do I make more money?" They said, "No." I said, "Well, why not?" They said, "Because you don't." Well, do I want to do that, or do I want to make, repair knives? And I decided to stay out, get out of the repairs, and go into the custom shop. And that's how I started in it. And then we had all the custom repair in our shop. We had a whole bunch of guys, and we had about 5 guys, and the room was probably, I'd say about that big, from over there. And no dust collectors, no nothing, and we didn't have really nothing in there. And Mac decided that we'd go out to the shop and take stuff from people. That wasn't good. You have all the lead men and supervisors, and Mac goes, like, he hands me a clipboard, and he goes, "Got a red tag," and he goes, "We're going to go in the copy shop and take stuff." So I'm walking around with him, he goes, "We want that." Put a red tag on it. By the end of the day, I was Mac Jr. And everybody who knew Mac, he was real ornery, and he would let you have it. So that's how we started, going around room to room in the new in the new factory, picking machinery for our shop. Well, we got everything in there. We had no room. After all workbenches in, we had no room to work. So then we had to start giving it back. You can't give stuff back when you take it away from them. They were taken. So that was the hard part. We had to figure out where we put it. Because we had 9 people in a small room. And you got customer service, and I was the first one, and then I had people helping me. I had a guy named Wayne Wilson, and then Dean Davison come in, John Knapp come in, and we just started doing sport hollows. Well, when we first started, they give us a piece of steel, and they said it was about 18 inches long, about 2 inches wide, and they said, "Put this knife on here and make it." Well, we didn't know what to do. I didn't, because there was no one else. And so I'm like, "Okay, do I have bandsaw?" We didn't have bandsaw. We didn't have nothing to do it, so I started cutting off it. I'd just sit there and grind the end off and start grinding it down, make the knife. And this was one of the first ones we made. We made a 921, a 923, and a 925. And then we made a 933, 931, and 935. And then somebody got smart like Mac and decided a dagger. Well, if you look at the old daggers, you look down them like this, there's a wave right at the end, well, that's me. All of mine had a little wave in the end. So I got out of making daggers. I didn't like that wave at the end. So I made like 921s, 23s, 25s, I made all the other ones except for the daggers. But when we really first started doing stuff, we didn't have, you know, a custom stamp. We just had a regular old box stamp. Here's some of our stamps that we used. We didn't use a lifetime one, but we used the first one on top that said buck. Then we used the dot one. Then you had the big custom one, the little one, and the small one. That's what we started out with. And then CJ come in the shop for a while. I should have drawn that picture. That's a good
Was that when he was parked up against the buffing machine?
He had the mullet.
Email that to my father, we'll get that on the website.
I got one when you were even younger. First surfing show, remember that?
Yeah.
He's in a little surfer shirt. He was.
Leroy taught me how to haul a drum.
Yeah. He still won't let me show his first holiday. Right here, I'll pass that on, bro. Well, when we first really started, we started going into customer service and just picking knives out. We would. We'd go in, if it had a broken handle or no butt, we'd just take it and go in and start fencing the handle. We'd put Cocobolo on them. We'd put ironwood. Mac loved mesquite. I don't know why. He's buffing and turn black. And then we used white micarta. We used everything we had at the shop. A lot of things that they didn't know, we didn't know, I didn't know. Because when we started stuff, they just say, here, do it. You know. Well, Mac, if anybody knew Mac, everything was supposed to be done in 2 or 3 hours. Build a custom knife in 2 hours, you can do it. So Mac would go and tell her, oh yeah, we can do the 921 in 5 hours. It took 7.5 hours to do it. And then you got to explain to Mac why it took so long. That was not fun. That's how we started, and I started in the custom shop. Mostly we started putting fancy handles on us. There was a gentleman named Bob Lerner. I don't know, did you meet Bob? He did a lot of articles for the custom shop. And we did some steak knives with jumping cactus with red handles in them and green. And all we did was fill them up with resin, put dye in them. And he put them on a magazine. He did, I can't remember the magazine, but he did a lot of stuff for us. He really pushed the custom.
That was Knives Illustrated.
Yeah, Knives Illustrated. He did a lot for us. Yeah. And that was, you know, that was a lot of fun. And it was fun doing this stuff, but it was hard to learn it. I have the very first custom knife that I made. I got it about 1981. We started really doing more custom knives about the end of the 80s. We didn't have any stamps, so we did it, you know, we'd use a lot of the old buck stamp, said buck and then a buck dot. And then they finally got us some stamps. And then I was the honorary one that started stamping stuff. They didn't want us to stamp them. And then, so I started stamping them right in the back of the garden. So that really caused a problem.
And what he means is stamping his initials in there.
We stamped our initials.
Wanted a little bit of recognition.
Yeah. And Mac said do it, up above said don't do it. So we just did it. But the biggest problem we had, and that's when you were working with us, we'd make a knife, we'd go in, put it in customer service, come back the next day to ship it, it was gone. No one knew where it went.
Well, what's up with that? That was when you were working.
Come on.
Let's leave those knives.
Junior used to say the same thing. Where'd they go?
Well, I was the sales manager, so I was the one interfacing with people who weren't going to get their knives on time. So, I was very interested in where those knives were.
Well, we finally found out it was the dad. Everybody upstairs come down. Hey, oh, that's pretty. Yeah.
Well, after the custom shop opened, the repair shop kept going. Because the custom shop did repairs right up until 1985.
Right.
And then they split off, and then you all went out on the floor.
Well,
Or did you go out on the floor before that?
no, we went out on floor in 85. We didn't go out because we split up. We went out because all the people out in the shop thought we were a bunch of goofballs. You can't see us, we're goofing up. And so Pat come in and told us, you know, hey, we're moving out of the shop. you don't want to move this out of shop. We were cutting mastodon ivory. We were cutting everything up. Well, everybody in the fabrication, in the fine blanking department, hated us because we'd open the doors and blow the fan, had the fan blow. And we got mastodon ivory, buffalo, orange, stag. Stinks. So they decided to move us out because they wanted to see us. We had big fans above our distenders. So I was like this. Chuck knows the fans. They were lined up. They made a big circle around the shop. So they stuck us right underneath the big one. Here you go. You want to smell this stuff, guys? We made sure everybody knew we were Everybody.
Share the wealth.
Imagine they started saying, hey, put them guys back in.
Put those guys back in the corner again.
But they didn't just throw you out in the middle of the floor. What did they do to you?
What did they do to us? Well, that was the first cage. The first cage wasn't not really in the middle. It was no one. They stuck it up. They put us in a cage, and we called it. I called it cell block 33. Well, you know, you go up. We kept the door open. Everybody walked by and closed the door on us. Well, you're standing in the cage looking out at everybody like, what's going on? And everybody's always, you stink, knock it off. And that was what happened all the time. And so we called it cell block 33. And then for years, I mean, even right before I left, they moved us from one end to another. When they moved us down to the handle shop, that was worse because that was the biggest thing. We made sure to get this sander right by the way.
So you were on or even way back there?
Yep.
Yeah.
He knows.
In the years that the custom shop was open, over 8,000 knives were made. 3 different styles or types. One was a customized regular production knife like this, 103s, any of the 100 series, all the folders. Then there was the 900 series. There was a separate line. You can look through this catalog if anybody wants to. A separate line of designs that you came up with a lot of them. Other guys come up with the others. That was always innovative.
Remember who else?
I know Dean came up with some of the trailing point hunters stuff. I know you did all of the drop point skinners.
Yeah, because I know me and Mac looked at the daggers. We were just looking at books, custom knife books. We had a couple of them. We just kept looking through. And the Geronimo was the first custom dagger we built. Yes. And the buoy was the cutlery roll buoy.
Yeah.
That was the first buoy. That was really the first buoy we ever made. The custom shop was a cutlery roll buoy.
And there were 3 versions of that. Had a brass bar inlay on the blade, I think the first 14. Then it was an overlay. But between the inlay and the overlay was an overlay with brass rivets, so it was actually 3 different styles of that 100 knives. The third category was actually true custom knives. Customers would send in drawings and request handle materials, and if y'all could do it, it was done.
Yeah. Well, really, one of them was the neatest one was the Harley buoy, the small Claymore sword with it. They come in the custom shop, the dad come down, they had it on I don't know what it was. It looked like a piece of paper, but you go like this, you can see through it. And they had it taped together. They had the blade, the front blade. They had like a little clip on it. And then they had another piece here for the blade, another piece for the handle, another piece for the butt. And they handed it to me and said, can you make this? I said, okay. I laid it down on 1/4-inch drafting paper, drew it all out. And the first guard was really a true S guard. We made it from a blank piece of brass. Milled the top of it out, milled the bottom, and then milled both ends so it looked like an S. And that was really one of our first ones we started making custom for somebody else or for a factory.
All right, the first 100 to 200, and then you touched a little bit on this, knives made in the custom stock were stamped just simply Buck.
Right.
Okay. After that, it was Buck Custom USA. Now there were a few custom knives with Buck USA stamp.
Right.
Any reason why? Or just whatever stamp was
Just
laid
whatever
there,
stamp.
grabbed it?
We had a box of them. We had a box of all the boards. They brought them in, they set them in the shop, Max said throw them away. We didn't have any stamps at the time. So we just started going through, oh, that one looks new enough to use, that one. We just started picking out the newest ones. We started using them. We were stamping them on an old machine, an old press next door, and tooling died, not tooling, but maintenance department. we're over there stamping it, I go, explain that to the boss. I broke his stamp machine. He was mad. So then we made one, what we had for years in the custom shop. Then we started doing a double stamp. That was on
Tell
everything.
them why that was and why you stopped it.
Well, most of our knives, our first ones we made were 921s, 23s, 25s, and all the Skinners and Hunters. And they wanted to stamp on one side and the other. They wanted to be evenly stamped on both sides. Well, when you're pulling on the stamp press, you got them on both sides. You stamp one, you do the other side of the brake blade up. And we didn't know it because you couldn't see it when it wasn't there polished. So we'd send it in to heat treat, get it all done. You start polishing it, you see a brake going this way and that way and cracks all over. And Matt goes, "What's that?" I said, "Broke." Well, so we decided not to do that because then we move them down a little bit, they're going to so you'd have a stamp high and a stamp low here. So that's why we stopped stamping them on both sides. And the daggers were the worst. We broke probably in one day 20 daggers.
But I have more daggers at a double stamp than any other knife.
Yeah, well, we
And,
got
and note 2 showing how one's up and one's down.
well, I don't know what we were drinking. But really, what we didn't pay attention, when we stamped the first one, we stamped it right side up. Well, we didn't think about it, and you put the blade in so you could see it, because this way you can see the stamp. So we're stamping it, and our stamps were round on one side and flat. When we put it in the machine, we had a little, like a bar would sit there to line up with it. You could look down the stamp machine, and you could see it. So you'd see the edge, and you'd get it straight. Well, none of us paid attention. We put it in so we could see it. You keep the bar there, and you stamp it. Well, then we realized, uh-oh, we stamped it upside down. We never said that. We just did it.
But you know, the official cover story was,
Yeah, I know.
this way would photograph both ways.
You haven't figured out yet that Leroy's good with cover stories?
For a long time, I thought it was the gospel truth. So Matt was the guy. Huh?
Yeah, Mac could really.
And Matt was the supreme scrounger.
Yep.
That's what he did.
Yep.
There were 3 stamp sizes, small, medium, and large. And
Yeah, they're going
that
around.
bars being passed around, you'll see on there. Medium was by far the most used.
That was the most used.
The only buck custom knives that weren't stamped were, you remember? The slip joints.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because they all came in from Schrade,
Schrade,
Millis.
yeah.
So they were already stamped, you all just customized the handles.
Now, there are some out there that are made by, let's say, about custom.
I've got a 301, I think
And
it is.
there's a complete set of 700 out there that say about custom on every blade. We did them for somebody, they have pearl handles. Those gentlemen, we get a lot of pearl for. Every custom knife we made, he had pearl in it. And he's somewhere up northern California.
Can I ask something on that? That same, where were my knives made? They were stamped by custom as well. They didn't built in Europe?
No, they were made in production.
They were production.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you first come in the shop, we were like, all of the 110s were made out on the line.
They all, it says by custom.
Yeah, they had a stamp. This was it. Even some of the Bowie knives that were stamped custom were actually made. The Harley style, the 909 and the 919, Mountain Bowie, the Apache, they were made out on the line. Y'all just mirror polished and put handles on
The only time you know that they were made in a custom shop if they had a radius hollow. If they were square hollow, they were done on the line. If they were radius hollows, they were done in the shop.
Which leads us to the next thing, dating a buck knife. And I don't mean taking it out to dinner or anything. The first 6 months that the shop was open, all the blades were satin finished. So that's one clue that can give you a ballpark idea. Although, if it was requested by a customer that it was satin finish, it could be a satin finish right up to the end.
And that was Mac who got it to be a more polished.
His idea, just to give you a little extra work because you knew you didn't like
He didn't like that. Their polish was hard because you had to take it in steps. You had to go from one belt all the way up to 500 grit.
So the mirror polish, of course, everyone knows, that started in the summer of '81. Now the initials that you talked about that were originally in the guard started in the fall of '81. How many months did you do it in the guard before you went to the toil?
We did it yearly 2 years. We did it all the way up to about 82.
All right, so if you see initials in the guard up until '82, that's the year that it was made. And initials after that were in the toil, like were '82 on up.
And you can tell a lot of the old ones, we didn't initial at the beginning because you have a square hull, and this is one of them. Now, the customer might not have wanted our initial in it, so if they didn't want it in, we didn't put it in. But a lot of the old square hollows like this, when we first started doing them, we put our initials right in the back of the guard. And that was something that we just started doing, and Mac agreed with it. He thought it was okay. But upstairs, at first didn't like it, and then they realized that it was beneficial for us, and it helped out. Because a lot of people, when I was doing it, they'd send a drawing in, and they'd say, well, I want this person to do it. So we do it. We put our initials in. And there's some out there would have initials of the customer right here. Right at the bottom. We put initials in there. And that was a customer's special. He'd have his own initials in the ours.
My very first sub-hilt buoy, I traded John Gabrick, a Florida buck rep, who you know very well, for a lucite knife. And when I got it in the mail, I was so disappointed because somebody had put their darn initials in the toil. And I thought that was somebody that owned it before I realized what was going on. Okay, another way, let's see, late 1981, the serial number started. So if the knife is serialized, like this one, it was always serialized up on the tag. Like I just called Joe. Joe can look it up in the custom log book and tell you the year that it was made, the handle that it should have. Sometimes the handle material got changed. And he can tell you the year that it was made. That's really the most definitive way to date a buck knife, a buck custom knife.
Yeah, before there too, John, we used to go in on a copy machine because we weren't doing serialized. We went and laid the whole knife down, photograph it, turn it over, do it. Got a whole bunch of it. Yeah, that was the first one, how we kept track of them. We didn't know. And Mac had an old green book. I don't know if you got it. He wrote everything down there.
Well, there is one other way to pinpoint when you made the blade. Underneath this beautiful mastodon is Leroy's name and the year and the date when it was made. You just peel it off and look.
Put it off and look.
That's
Well, that's somebody
funny
did.
you would say that, and that's how I did a lot of my knives. It's like the little extra messages or something. Electronic guys just come out with a new song.
Well, everything went into heat treat. So we do a whole bunch of stuff, and you'd have John Knapp doing some, Dean Davison, and nobody did it, just send them in. We didn't know who they were. So I put my name, the date, and everything on it. So yeah, if you take all these old ones off, there's all the information on it. You can look at it.
I don't think so. All right, the square grind, you touched on that a minute ago. The square grind was done from 80 to 84. So that's another way to not exactly pinpoint the date, but it gives us a good ballpark.
This was the square grind what we did, and really, when Matt come up to me and he goes, "You're gonna learn how to make custom knives." Well, no one knew how to do it. I didn't really. I knew how to put handles on and stuff, and so I just took a 110, sat down and started playing with it, and I said, "Okay, I can do it." Well, my first one, I wouldn't show it to you guys for no amount of money. It is bad looking, but we started doing this, and I was talking to Mac and told him, I said, "We got to change it because we want to be different in the custom shop than everybody else." So we started doing the radius hollow. Well, the first radius hollow is not this much on it. It comes more up, and it's real shallow. It comes straight up to a little bitty hollow at the top. And all it was the wheel went in, and it fitted, and I come right out. That was the first radius hollow. Then we started getting a little more and a little more on them. And the same with the sub-hill. When we first built that was enough. But that's how we did our radius hollow. We did the square for a while. Me and Mac was at a show in Glendale, and a guy from Black Jack Nice came over. Chuck's dad was with us. He's sitting at the table, and this guy's standing on the table, had a beer in his hand, spitting all over the place, and he goes, "That's a factory-made knife." And I said a few bad words. His dad told me to be quiet. Man told me to be quiet. The guy kept pointing at me, and I told him, I said, yeah, we do these by hand. He goes, no, it's a factory-made nut. And, well, we had all square hollows, and that's what he thought it was. It was done on a machine. And we finally convinced him that it was done by hand. It was after I was told to shut up a whole bunch of times.
If you go to a knife show today and look at all the custom knives laying on the tables, you still to this day won't find very many radius hollows. I don't remember seeing any of them except.
No, even when I do them now, when I do a lot of knife shows, guys ask me who showed me how to do it, and I said, I just learned it myself. I took a protractor and just laid it down, scribed the line on it, and that's what I decided to do. And then Dean picked it up, John picked it up, and everybody come in, we just started teaching. A lot of guys couldn't do it. When they couldn't do it, they went back on the line. That was the hard part, teaching somebody to do a radius hollow, because everybody's used to doing a square hollow. And it's hard to teach somebody from the line to do this, it was, because we were all taught to do certain things on the line. And when you do it on the line, everybody's so used to doing the same thing that what they'll do is they get in a rut and they go back to that thing. So we used to tell everybody, hey, when you walk in a custom shop, what you know on the line, you forget. When you come in here, you gotta learn everything over again. That was hard. It was to teach someone to learn a radius hollow. So we started teaching square hollows first. We taught them a square hollow, and then we work on them, and then we move them up to a radius hollow. Once they got good enough, then we turn them loose on them. But that was the hardest thing, is teaching somebody. And CJ knows how hard it was. It was fun, huh?
You know, to get off track for a minute, we've talked a lot about Mac McKinney. George, are you in here? Yeah. Stand up and tell us that story about Mac being at a show where you had some money with you and the way he treated you until you pulled the money out, and then the way he treated you after.
Oh, when I first met him, he was at the Del Mar Gun Show, and he had been working doing repairs on the 110s, and he had some custom, 110s that he had done and some 112s. And, I came up, I always said after I got to know him a little bit, I looked like a Tootsie Roll coming down the aisle to him, because I came up to him, and he, like Leroy said, I considered him a surly type character. You look at the table, what are you looking at, at the table, Kind of interested in that. That was it, right? And then, okay, can I take a look at it? You take a look at, what are you asking on? And then you pull out your money, and then you got conversation. And you got conversation up until the transaction took place, and then he was, okay, where's the next customer? That was my first experience with meeting Mac, yes.
That was back at shows too. You do that all the time. If you walk up, well, good one. We were doing Glendale show with us, and guys were walking all over. Burt Reynolds walked up, had a hat on and glasses, walked up and looked at the table, and Mac goes, "You gonna buy anything?" He didn't say nothing to him. And Mac lifted up, pulled the glasses off, and he But Mac was like that. If you reach in your pocket, he talked to you. If you did, get out of here. Go somewhere else.
Let's talk about steels.
Okay.
440C.
440C was used a lot at the beginning. We used it for probably till about 83. And then we started finding custom catalogs. We got with K&G and Sheffield. Sheffield was the first one we dealt with. And they got us involved at ATS 34 and D2. There wasn't no, well, there was 154. There was no ATS back then. It was 154, D2, and A2. That's what we used mostly back then. It was 90% of the knives were 440C that we made, unless the customer wanted it.
But if you have a custom knife that's mirror polished and it's pitted,
425 modified. That is
full of trash.
Well, what it was, Buck had it made, and I don't know all about it, but it was made for non-rusting. And I I guess they did testing on it and everything. They give it to us to use it in the custom shop. That's the worst thing they did was, because everything was mirror polished. And how do you explain to a customer that it's full of bits? And you couldn't. You just say, well, you know, they bought it. And then a lot of them, we turn around satin finish. There's a 923 we did. That was a satin finish we had a scrimshaw. Because we did 100 of them and they didn't like the bits. So we went to satin finish. And we started going back to 440C, D2. D2 really made polishes nice. Both a great edge. But we stayed with them too a lot.
Has anybody in here ever seen Wild Bill So Quiet? It's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn.
When you were hired, when did you move into the custom shop? What year?
It was like 91. I went into the custom shop, and all I wasn't a custom knife maker, I was a line worker, but I was fast, and I learned quick. Well, they stuck me in there to help make the Siberian Impala line, the 500 series with Siberian Impala and Mile. So I'd jump in, help them kick out a bunch of those, and then go back out on the line. And then I went back and forth a few months, and then eventually they just left me in there. And
Tell them about your reputation, what everybody thought you were.
they thought I was a spy.
006.
Because the custom guys, after Leroy was gone, the guys in there were kind of goofing off a little bit. So they thought, you know, and I just go in, do my job, go home, you know, I work hard, but I didn't play their games, so I wasn't one of them. So they kind of blackballed me and called me a spy for the company. They wouldn't teach me anything. If I tried to watch them do something, they'd move away from me. You know, I couldn't learn anything from them. And then they eventually closed the custom shop in December of '93.
And it was really because of what you said. They were goofing off.
Yeah.
So the hours needed to make the knives kept getting longer and longer and longer, pricing the knives higher and higher, until your dad decided, you know what, we're going to yank the rug. And then after the shop closed, you were still Buck's only custom knife maker. What was your role from there on out?
Well, what they did was they closed it, and they handed us, they gave me some paperwork and said, we're going to have one opening. You're not going to do custom knives. The person's only going to do customizing and helping with prototypes and stuff like that. But there's only going to be one opening, so there was like 4 or 5 of us left in the custom shop, and the other guys decided to stick together because if they stuck together, Buck couldn't get rid of them because they had all the knowledge. Because I didn't know anything, because I was just the outcast. I was the spy, and I was the company man. So they didn't turn in any of the applications for that one opening, and I did. And they picked me, and the other guys got thrown out on the line.
Your stock really went up then with that.
Oh, I got some real good looks going down the hallway.
You didn't leave your lunch in the refrigerator, did you?
But in all honesty, Buck Knives lied to me. Because they said I wouldn't be doing any custom knives, and all I would have to do is customize knives, which I've done before. So I said, I can do the job. So they closed the shop, and it's me in there. The second day on the job, engineering comes down with a picture and says, here, make this blade and hollow grind it for a meeting we're going to have in 2 hours. Never hollow ground. That's custom stuff. Hand hollow grinding and making a blade from scratch, that's custom stuff. So I called Leroy on break. Leroy, how do I do this? What do I do? And Leroy said, fake it.
I said, fake it, start with the left hand.
Because you hollow grind with the left hand, and you can match it up better with the hand you got more control with, the right hand. So at least And I did, and I was there ever since. And then they said, hey, you can hollow grind it and make a blade. So they gave me the last few orders that were left over from the custom shop. So right off the bat, I'm finishing off the last half dozen custom knife orders.
Calling me on all of that.
All of them, on every one.
Yeah. That subhill was the funnest too, because how do you do the hologram? I thought you're in trouble.
Yeah.
The hardest knife to hologram.
So I faked it good enough where the customers took the knives and nothing was said, so, okay. So my main job was helping with special, this is where we started the special projects limited edition department. It's when the custom shop was. So it wasn't custom, it wasn't production, it was higher and lower, so it was in the middle. And that's what we did for, we're still doing today. Which one? The fake ones, oh. Well, you know, it's gonna be confusing because the fake ones have no initials on them. So they're gonna look like some pretty old ones. Because they're kind of rough. So it's like on their learning curve, that's what mine looked like.
You ain't got to tear the handles off.
That, well, then it's gonna say underneath, if you read this, see Leroy. I wasn't allowed to put my name on it.
Share with everybody how you got your name.
Oh.
I know a lot have heard it, but it's always fun listening to it again.
My father was full-blood Irish. And he came from a big family, and we were a big family. And so he was across the street drinking beer while my mom was in the hospital. And he figured, okay, it's about that time. So he comes back to the hospital. Nurse catches him in the hallway and says, Mr. Cody. He goes, you had a baby boy. Congratulations. Oh, good. She goes, have you decided on a name yet? He goes, oh yeah, write this down. And the nurse goes, what? She goes, yeah, write Wild down. Are you sure? Oh yeah, we've already talked about it. It's okay. So she wrote it down. And then he went to the hospital room. And my mom goes, hey, we have a baby boy. He goes, I know. Have we decided on the final name yet? He goes, it's already taken care of. She goes, what did you do? Like the year before, he tried to do it with my older brother, but she stuck in that thing, that traditional thing where the first son has to be named after the dad. So she got away with that. But the second year, she wasn't in the hallway to stop it. So I got stuck with Wild Bill Cody.
If you were a girl, would you have been Little Annie?
No, my sister was that close to Annie Oakley. She left strict instructions with all the doctors and nurses that worked in the hospital to not listen to that crazy Irishman.
You're world famous for your raised, I like to call them raised inlay, but you call them your raised cutouts.
Yeah,
A lot of people saw you work on them last night. Why don't you show them and just give a little walkthrough on what you did and how you came up with the idea.
well, I saw David Yellowhurst's inlays and I fell in love with them, thought they were great. But I like antlers, stuff like that. But antlers are rounded, inlays are flat. So I had a little dilemma there. So it popped into my head about just cutting out the antler itself and doing some polishing. So what I did was I put a picture on the antler, cut it out. So I got the antler, put a picture on it, cut the piece out. So after I did that, I took the little piece, the antler head, and polished it. And then put it back in the knife. And I raised it slightly because some of the material's been removed. And when I did that, it stands up a little bit, but if you look at it sideways, it keeps all the same bumps because it's the same piece that was in there. Well, when I take that to custom knife shows, all the custom knife makers want to know, they get confused. They go, well, it's not carving, because carving would be below. This is sticking up. So there's only two possible ways to do this. One is to put it on. How did you get it on the antler? Because it's not flat, it's hard to glue. And the other way was to sand down the entire handle and re-dye it. So they figured it's on there. And they couldn't figure out how I got it on there. And I said, well, it's not on there. It's in there, it's pushed up. But it's the same piece that was in there. No one's ever done it before, I guess, so it just really blew everybody away.
And how do you keep it from just coming right on there?
Well, what I do is I cut it at a reverse angle like a cork, so it'll fall out the bottom, no problem. But if you push it down, it's like a cork, it's not going anywhere. And then when you fill the backside with epoxy and put a steel plate on there, it can't go that way either. So it's there, it ain't moving. And I saw David Yellowhorse cut out a 110 blade with his horse logo in. I thought that was really cool. And Buck said they couldn't do that. They had a laser, but they couldn't do it because it was too complicated. They couldn't cut things out with the laser. So I said, so I got a blade. I made my blade, and I cut a wolf print through it with a crown antler and a sterling silver wolf head that I got from one of my Cherokee silversmith buddies, and I took that to work and said, hey, look at this. And they said, well, we can do that because it's just simple holes. And so they came out with the track series, and then when I took a second step, I cut different holes and made it look like a elk head. They go, hey, well, maybe we can do that. And so that started all the blade cutouts.
Well, you did something for me before you did them for Buck.
Yeah.
You did on a Seville buoy, Mastodon Ivory.
Yeah,
You did
nice
an
design.
elephant, a dolphin, and for Safari Club International.
Safari Club International, I did their logo. I did the shield was the hole, and then there was a lion in it with spears. So I did stuff like that.
Don't call me a lot of names on that.
Oh yeah, that blade is hard. You only get like that far before the saw blade wears out or breaks. Yeah. It takes a long time.
Well, I was on there, I gave him 12 921s, chip flamed. And all I did was mirror polish the area what I wanted to cut out.
Yeah.
I took him to him, I said, hey Bill, here, do these.
Yeah.
He's like, I never done them. I said, here, you got them now.
I wish you were my neighbor back there. Bring your saw.
I have enough for them.
Before you all go, you're welcome to, there's custom log production numbers and a couple stories and a list of all the employees that work in the custom shop. Does anybody have any questions for Wild Bill or Leroy?
I said two, maybe this is the first one, should be quick. That stamp that you pass around, do you have that lifetime stamp?
Don't look at me, I never had it. I never saw it.
Is that Axar included at the mass that you have?
Yes, it is.
Sorry, Bill.
All right, second question, and I think I've asked this before, I never wrote down the answer. Buck Custom San Diego. What can you tell me about that stamp?
Really, I don't know too much about it. I don't know if it was before we had a custom shop. You don't know, I don't know where it came from.
I don't have any recollection of it.
Yeah, but I don't know, Frank might have had it made or something. Someone had it made because it's on a lot of old buildings that were cut, where it custom shop. Yeah, it says Williams Boulevard.
It just says, I think it's Buck Custom San Diego as a stamp.
Yeah, there was something on about it.
Yeah, there's one other knife that I've seen in the market. I always question the fact, is it the real thing or what?
How long does it take to make a custom knife when you order it?
Well, when we first started doing them, Like this one right here, we did it in a wooden handle. It would take 10 hours to build, start to finish. Your 921 took 7.5, 923 took 8.5, and these took anywhere from 9.5 to 10 hours. Ivory took longer because we never knew what we were doing with ivory. With ivory, we had a lot of problems. We got all the ivory in and we started cutting it. You cut it up, set it down, and look back and there's a puddle of water down on the ground because the ivory was full of water. And so it just took a little bit, some of them took longer. A sub-hill, the very first sub-hill that I built, took 40 hours. But boy, did I get in trouble for that.
But it would take a couple of weeks to get.
Yeah, each really, it took more time, but see, with me, I wouldn't do one knife at a time. I'd grab a whole bunch of work orders. I'd grab like 10 or 12 work orders, and I'd start grinding the blades out. Once the blades were brown, I'd surface grind them, get them into heat treat, and I'd start another run. So I kept things going, just like on the line. Because, you know, I was used to working on the line, so everything was like line work.
Except, now, when you say 10 hours, you didn't have guards and you didn't have blanks. You had sheets of steel.
We had sheets of steel. Everything
Bars,
was cut out.
brass.
Bars, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
bars,
all
brass.
raw.
Yeah. So yeah, we built our own guards.
It was a good day when you didn't have to walk down to maintenance to borrow the bandsaw.
Yep. I'll break their blade and get yelled at. And then we had an old blade. They bought us a bandsaw. That was about the worst thing they did for us. Because all it cut was handle material. So we cut handle material, we'd run over new blades. And I was always going back and forth. And there was a poor Bill, I felt sorry for him because when I left, he did the same thing I did. You couldn't, you know, you have to go do stuff. So you'd have lead man and supervisors. What are you doing? I'm going over here. Well, why are you doing that? Hey, don't worry about it. And we just go do it. And I was all over. I'd go over here, do something. I'd have to go over here because we didn't have everything in the shop. So we were over in tool and die all the time, surface grinding. We'd go to maintenance. We did. And I was making a stamp machine so we could do our stamping. Got that done. And we were always over. I was always moving around. When I left, poor Bill, because everybody thought he was goofing off. And I'd be having stuff in my pockets. Well, he'd show it. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, the production people were used to production people, so it was like you stand in front of one machine for 8 to 10 hours a day, and that's what you did. But because in production, the parts or the knives were brought to you, and you handed them to the next guy, so you just stood at your spot. So if you were away from your spot, you were goofing off. Well, I didn't have anybody. I wasn't in a production line, so nobody was handing me anything. I had to go get it. And then when the knife was done, I had to take it over to shipping and packing, and then come back empty-handed.
They thought you were goofing off.
Walking down the hallway empty-handed, what are you doing?
That's where you learned all that duck walk.
Yep.
Guy, real quick, can we get CJ to bring us up to date on what's happening now in Idaho with the custom shop? These two guys out on their own, right? Y'all out on your own. What's happening now?
Well, it's,
CJ?
He knows you.
it's spot or anything.
Management is not
I could answer that
responsible.
question.
Well, I still do some designing for for Buck on the limited edition special project stuff.
And Buck sends stuff to me all the time. If they're not gonna do it, they'll send it to me.
So I'll design it and I'll make it up there.
We need such a wallflower.
Come on, get up here.
Stand over here myself. No, I wanted to say one thing about Wild Bill. That, you know, you're in a production environment, so everybody's hustling, everybody's doing stuff. And Bill's always got his little side projects going on. That's where a lot of this stuff came from, was him just kind of farting around with something. It turned out kind of cool. And you never really knew when it was going to be cool or it was going to be silly. And so he'd come, see him coming down the hallway, he'd go.
Yeah.
And it'd always be wrapped up. So he'd unwrap it from a napkin and he'd go. And one of the biggest compliments you could give Bill was to steal it from him. You stole it from him. It was cool. I got a bunch of stuff in my office that Bill did.
Because he's been doing that to me for years.
That's the biggest compliment. Just take it.
Just take it.
Yeah, he likes
Hey, my mom did.
Hey, like this this knife right here?
Yeah. For the John Wayne, you were lucky to get that back when you handed it to
I'm
me.
still, that's all.
Before, CJ would hesitate, and his dad would swing by and grab it from us. And go.
Yeah. Anyway, as far as custom shops going right now, the vast majority of what Buck is doing with customs is more, I'm not gonna say production oriented, but it's more doing special projects. Because when you're doing it takes as much engineering time to do one as it does to do 5,000. So when you're putting in all that design time, so really what Buck is doing is like tapping into the creativity and then figuring out how to do something else more in a production environment than a one at a time kind of thing. One of the things that McKinney and Leroy and I all proved is that it's just really tough to make money making custom knives. You're still proving that.
Yep. Well, really, the custom part of it for me, I used to do 300 a year. I do probably 30 or 40 now because you guys keep me low busy.
But it's just really tough when you're working out a design with somebody and they send you a design and you mark it up for some things that just ain't gonna work. And so you mark it up a little bit, you send it back and you look at it and you read it and they send it. And that's just so much time that you're spending trying to dial in that design. And so
back and forth.
So this is what we're doing in custom shop. We've got a number of folks. You remember Jeff Ledgerton? Anyway, he has just turned into a fabulous artisan as far as doing fancy stuff. So we still have our hand in. Some of the folks we brought up from San Diego are still working in the special projects department. It's really the largest single department in Buck, the special projects department. So that's kind of where we're doing everything. So it's kind of interesting. They're out there cutting up Elkhorns all the time. There's just always, when I'm leading tours, there's always something fun to go in and check out and see what are you cutting on today? What are you working on today?
On your website, you build your own knife. You've got 2 models there.
Mm-hmm.
You see you staying with that particular type
Yeah.
of activity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's working. We'd like to do more and more on the website because it's just so easy to, we're having a tough spot with the people who designed our website. It's just tough to change it, alter it. It's just a real pain. So at some point, we're going to have to redo our website so that we want to put on a special, we want to make something happen, we want to change the graphics. It can be done easy and quick. And that's all part of that.
A lot of people want more choices in the designer choice line in custom shop. They want more than the 110, more than the 112. Do you foresee that happening?
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to say when, but I do.
CJ, I'm going to ask you a question about your etching.
The etching?
Doing etching in-house
Yes,
now? Or?
we're doing the selective
Gold
gold
etching?
plating with the accident.
Okay. Selected gold plate with the silver plate.
We did the gold. I don't think we do the silver. I think we're only set up to do the gold plating.
Gold with just the black background.
Yeah. And then we do the laser. We have the laser marking set up.
So,
And we're talking about bringing in pad printing. Right now we send out pad printing.
so y'all are making your own photo etch match or artwork. You're doing your own artwork and you're making your own
I
mask.
don't think we're doing our own artwork. I think we still send out for the artwork because there's a science behind the artwork of how you draw the lines and how that will then coalesce to a nice, properly shaded picture on the blade. So there's still a science to the. What we'll do is we'll rough out a scene and send it out to have that drawn as an etch, and then that's what we will use to drive. It's really an interesting process.
The further the acid beats down, it beats sideways as much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so how you draw the lines will determine something that will be completely solid or it'll be a little more shaded, so you can get blacks and grays depending upon how they draw the lines.
And is everything masked off? The gold edge put on there? The gold plate?
Actually, the gold is put on first, and then it's etched around the gold. That's why it's so sharp. So the gold is put on first, and then it's etched around the gold. It's really an interesting process. it's a photoresist, so this material, this coating on the blade resists the acid, but it can't tolerate light. So you shine light on it, burns away the resist. Everywhere you shine the light, that's where the acid will burn. And the material, and the same with gold. It's a similar process for the selective gold as well. You shine the light on this. Anyway, it's just a.
So the acid will eat the gold and the steel.
Oh yeah.
Is there any difference where, like, say the ATS-34, or is it strictly the 440C that y'all are doing?
No, it all works. I don't know. I honestly don't know if there's a difference in process between the two materials. I know they all etch. They've done it all.
Y'all have used all run. You've actually done your own in San Diego. You used Barron. And who else have you used?
I don't think we've used anybody else. Have we used anybody else?
I think I've heard Taylor also.
I don't remember using anybody. We were using RM etchings. Barron had a little different technology, so they were able to do different materials. They were able to do like brass and bronze.
They did the pre-color gold,
They
the
did some
pre-color
different,
eagles and stuff like
different
that.
things that just added a little bit. And Barron also had a process that was more capable of doing a finished knife. So you didn't have to start with a blade and then build a knife. You could take a finished knife and then do that. But the processes we follow are the RM etchings process. He came in and taught us how to do it. And we did that.
Getting close to the end. Anybody else have any questions?
Now that Paul Boss is retired, who's doing heat treating?
Paul had an assistant named Paul. Paul Warner. And Paul came up with us from San Diego. He's been working in heat treat for 12 years. He's been doing all the heat treat for the last 3 years. Even everything Paul was doing, they were completely interchangeable. And so, because Paul knew he was going to retire.
Seamless transition.
Yeah. So now it's just as far as Paul Farner had been doing everything, and there's really not much to heat treat. It's just dial in the recipe and then scrupulously follow it. Is really all there is to heat treat.
Minutes make a difference.
That?
Minutes make a difference.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Will the Boss logo still be on the knife?
yeah. What we're doing is because Paul Boss developed the recipes we follow, and we still will, kind of like Bill calling Leroy, we'll still call Paul and say we're working on we got some new material or something we haven't dealt with before.
Will he tell you to fake it?
I think that's a Remerism there, man.
Any other questions, sir?
How long has Leroy and Bill been working on knives when we started doing here?
I've been doing it for 37. I started in 79, so I've been doing it over 30. I made my first knife was a 103. I was working while I was at school, and they gave me a blank. I went over to Federal Boulevard, and they gave me a 103 blank. I took it to school, ground it, took it back. They heat treated it, ground it back, put a handle on it, and I was standing in class, looking at it going like this, and a friend of mine reached up and went, "No." I cut his thumb from here to here, and I had to go to the principal office.
Nowadays, they take school down, cost money.
All right, folks. Don't
John,
forget.
what we should add is, I mean, you guys are amazing to have these seminars and get the Yellow Horse and Leroy and Wilde, and especially, man, running the company at these seminars. You guys deserve a big applause. Y'all